Welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 5, and today we're taking a look at the 1967 Shelby GT500. So this was a part of the original run of high-performance Ford Mustangs that was produced between 1965 and 1967 by Shelby themselves, before Ford took over between 1968 and 1970, eventually reviving the Shelby GT500 name in the mid-2000s. So 2048 of these were produced, and all of them were based on the first generation of the Mustang that was produced between 1964 and 1973, although this can be easily separated from other Mustangs from the time due to its different front-looking bodywork. Its bodywork itself in part was fiberglass, and it also had quite a high a 4-speed gearbox with really rather good ratios on it as well to improve the top speed, which generally was an issue for a lot of muscle cars from this period. They typically had very low top speeds, most of the time could not crack 140, whereas that is not the case with this car. But overall, I love the look of this car. It's just, everything about it just sits well and it looks well proportioned. You've got the quad headlights, you've got the Shelby GT500 badging in the grille there. Then you've got the obviously the decals on the bonnet and on the side. You've got these fiberglass scoops on the rear quarter panels. Then you've got the really nice looking wheels. Then you've got the scoop that is integrated into the back of the car. Then you've got all the rear lights, which again look fantastic. More badging for Shelby GT500 there with the Cobra name, which would unfortunately be dropped when Ford took over. You've got the twin exhausts, and yeah, just all looks superb. Absolutely perfection, quite frankly. Certainly prefer it to the likes of the GT500KR, which is a version of this car that we've not had on Forza games since Forza Motorsport 4, although I also equally like the GT500 428 CJ, which again we've not had since Forza Motorsport 4, but I do like the look of that as much as this one, especially given how distinct it looks in comparison to other Mustangs. But yeah, as you can see, a really rather nice interior. You've got your Shelby badging again all over the place. Got a lovely wood steering wheel with free spoke metal steering wheel with the holes in the middle of it to reduce weight. And then you've got those dials, which looks absolutely superb. Again, you don't often get a lot of cars in America from the time that had RPM gauges, usually because they were automatic, so you didn't really need to. But yeah, being a more performance orientated car, that's why it does have the RPM gauge. But you also have other gauges on this as well. You got the oil pressure down there, and not sure what the overpressure one is. We might go round into the passenger seat to have a look, but still plenty of dials there to take a look at. And yeah, just the interior in general just looks very nice. Even got a decent sized boot with a full spare wheel in the back. And yeah, here's the passenger side. So yeah, can we work out what that dial says? Oh yeah, it's batteries, amps. So yeah, so the car is giving you plenty of information about what it is and isn't doing. So that's always a handy thing to have, considering this is a performance car. Performance cars generally are a lot more on the edge of what is reliable and what isn't. So you need all of the information you can get from it. And yeah, we've got a massive engine in this, a 7-litre V8 producing 355 horsepower and 420 pounds-feet of torque, which is quite a lot. Usually Mustangs would have 6-litre or less engines, but yeah, this is obviously the exception in that, given it's obviously a more high performance version. So yeah, I love the look of this car, but thankfully there is more to this than just pure looks. So let's get out onto the open road and see what it can do. So yeah, being a muscle car, the drag strip is where this car is most at home. So let's see what it can do before we hit the speed camera, and then we'll get it around the track. So yeah, with a lot of torque, this isn't the easiest of things to get off the line. It does kind of bog down at times, but as soon as you start getting through the gears and getting speed up, as you can see, it's more than capable of shifting quite nicely. And yeah, you can see there that the gears are quite long. Yeah, 113 miles an hour there. So yeah, the gears being long obviously means that it might well not be taking the most use of, or making the most use of its horsepower and torque, but it does mean that it's got a much higher top speed than its contemporaries, which you know, is a good thing. It's the kind of thing you want from a performance orientated vehicle at the end of the day. Because if you're going to run out of, you know, speed at 125, 130, like a lot of similar cars like this, then yeah, you're not going to have much luck on the track. Which, surprisingly, is where this car's also capable of being on. Which again is not something you can say about a lot of Mustangs from this period. Especially when you start getting into the 70s with the likes of the Mach 1, which were quite gargantuan in their weight. Now granted, this isn't a complete lightweight, it does weigh 3,794 pounds, but still that is not enough to keep it down on the in class, as it is high-end C-class. And yeah, these are the stats. So the braking is typically going to be quite poor for a car of this age and type, but still 2.9, you can do a lot worse than that. Launches are pretty poor as well, but again, like I said, because of the massive amount of torque going through those rear wheels, it can be a bit of a struggle to get off the line. But the acceleration, handling and speed are actually fairly good for a car of this type. If we look at classic muscle cars from the same kind of era, then you'll look at, say, a Firebird Trans Am, which granted has more torque and more power from less weight, but as you can see, the braking and the handling are far worse, even though the launch is better. Then you look at a fellow Mustang. Granted, this has better handling, but it also has worse acceleration. Not much better in the way of braking, given it weighs a lot less. And then you look at something like a Rebel the Machine. Worse handling, worse braking, worse everything pretty much, despite having more power and, as you can see, more in the way of the Buick GSX is what we're looking at, which has more torque, more power, but also more weight and therefore worse handling. Handling on the Rebel Machine is actually as good as. This is probably one of the better comparisons compared to the GT500. But again, less power, only slightly more in the way of torque, but it does have a little bit less in the way of weight. So overall, this is a fairly solid car in comparison to other muscle cars from the time period. So yeah, and at the end of the day, I do like the look of this car more than most other muscle cars. Certainly prefer it to the likes of the AMC Javelin. Never been a massive fan of the way that looks, and unlike this car, that car has a very low top speed as well. So yeah, let's hear what this car sounds like, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, like a lot of muscle cars from the time, big V8 noise, sounds glorious, and yeah, you just don't really want to ever shift up. But luckily you don't really have to as quickly, because obviously the long gears, but also because it's got quite high RPM for a car of this type. A lot of muscle cars from this era usually change up from between 4.5 to 5,500 RPM. This, as you can see, does get up to about 6,000. So yeah, that is pretty good on its part, and again just shows how much more performance orientated this car is, rather than just having big horsepower, big torque, and then not really being able to back those numbers up. And in terms of acceleration, it's pretty good. 0 to 16, 6.185 seconds. 0 to 114.267 seconds. And because of the way it's geared, it will go to a top speed of 153 miles an hour, which is far and away one of the best top speeds for a car of this type from this era. So yeah, that's all good. Handling wise, it's as you'd expect. It's got a little bit of body lean here and there. The brakes aren't the best, and yeah, it's very easy to get the rear end to step out. But much like the Ginetta that we've already looked at from the same car pack as this, it's still a fun car to drive, in part because it is at the end of the day also a challenge to drive. Obviously it's not going to be as agile or as, you know, good under handling as the Ginetta is, despite also being a V8 rear-wheel drive car. But you know, you can see the similarities in terms of how much work you have to put into get this car around a corner or around a track at any kind of speed. But that is at the end of the day rewarding and therefore satisfactory, and yeah, makes this a memorable car to be driving. So yeah, overall a fantastic car. Really glad we've got it in this game, because we've never had this version of the GT500 before, and I know it's quite similar to the KR version that I already talked about, but that car had slightly less in the way of power, the same kind of torque, but I didn't quite like the front end on that car quite as much as this, which is, unlike this car, a little bit more pronounced and a bit more sticky out here, whereas this has a classic look to it but is able to separate itself from other Mustangs of the time. So yeah, get out there and get this car if you haven't already. It's part of the Acceleration car pack, which has 3 other cars. We've already looked at the Ginetta. We've also got a Ford Supervan 4, which is an all-electric van, which is absolutely mental, and it also has a McLaren Sabre in it, which I've already looked at via Forza Motorsport. So yeah, it's well worth getting the car pack if you haven't got it already, especially if you are into your V8 rear-wheel drive cars, because you've got 2 of those to enjoy in terms of, you know, the classic way of doing it. But you've also got the McLaren Sabre, which is also a V8 rear-wheel drive car. So, but yeah, but regardless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.